Luxury Croatian cruising on the Adriatic. Is it expensive, a rip-off, affordable, good value? And how does it compare as an experience with doing a regular holiday? This is a time when everyone's talking about price in Croatia and how things are very expensive. And I teamed up with Katarina Line, the leading small cruise ship operator on the Adriatic in Croatia, to look a little bit about the experience and the prices and the value that one can get on a luxury cruise ship these days. And so I've taken two cruises with Katarina Line. One was last summer on the luxury Splits to Dubrovnik via the Islands tour, where I had a private cabin en suites with my own private terrace, which was lovely. And then earlier this year, I took the Northern Gems tour from Split to Lochin, where I had a cabin, again, with private bathroom below deck. And I want to really just go through some of the myths, really, because this has always been seen as a very, very exclusive, very, very expensive operation. And before we go into the pricing, there's a few things I'd like to point out for you just to have in the back of your mind to consider. The first thing is that obviously you're coming on a holiday, so the number one thing you're aiming to do is to relax, unwind, and have a good time. And in order to do that, you want to take as much hassle out of the holiday as possible. So one of the big differences between taking a cruise for 7 days, going island hopping, and actually going solo and taking your car is all the hassle of booking ferries, waiting for the ferry, get on the ferry travel time, and so on, and then finding your hotel, having to book that, go to different places, packing, unpacking, trying to find your beach spot every day, restaurants and everything else, excursions, all those things that you have to do solo. But for a 7-day holiday, that can be actually quite time-consuming, quite stressful, and in peak season, with all the crowds, a lot of waiting time, a lot of lost time. I really became aware of the magic of cruising. It was my first ever cruise, actually, last August. I went from Split to Dubrovnik with Katarina Line, and our itinerary was magical, just very quickly. And I was actually traveling for the first time with first-time visitors to Croatia. So I've been here for 23 years, so I've got fairly tired eyes looking at things. But I had this really amazing opportunity to see things through the eyes of first-time visitors, spending on a luxury cruise and seeing Croatia this way. And I was totally blown away by what I saw through their eyes. And so if you think about all the hassle of like packing and parking and rental cars and all those different things, I didn't see a single car the whole week apart from when we went to one excursion and land. So you have your collection from the airports, and then you come into Splits. You're right in the center of Splits. You go onto the cruise, you unpack, and that's the last packing you do for the whole week because this is your room for the whole week. So that's a huge advantage. Our trip was from Splits downtown. We went to Bold on Brač the next day for a couple of hours. We stopped for a swimming spot. Every single day they go to an idyllic place, and you have an hour and a half, 2 hours even, just to go swimming. So this is a combination of beach time plus island hopping plus culture plus everything else all rolled into one on an itinerary which is pre-prepared for you, so you don't have to think about a single thing apart from all relaxing. So then from Bol we went off to swimming in the Pakleni Islands and then into Hvar town overnight. We then had a swim stop the next day, went into Korčula town right in the center. There's no question of having to stay somewhere out of town. All these boats park in prime locations right in the center, so you're right in the center of the action. So from Korčula, where we had included, there was a wine tasting in a village just outside the main town. Then we went on to Miljet via another swimming stop, of course. The next day we had another swimming stop, and then we drove by the old walls of Dubrovnik at sunset, which is absolutely magical, special moment even for me. 2 nights in Dubrovnik, including guided tour. There were guided tours included all the way around. And then we went from there, we went to Trstenik on Belishat, which is a big wine country, and that's where Gurgut Chills comes from. So the Americans are very happy to go up there and get the wine from there. Again, with a swimming stop. Next day, swimming stop and into Milnot or Brač. We went inland to a traditional family farm, the donkey farm, where they did a traditional peka, one of the great dishes of Dalmatia, which was a highlight for many. From Milnot, we went back to Splits, and that was 7 days. And I honestly have never really grasped just how magical it can be to have the highlights of Dalmatia put on a plate for you every single day, where you have beautiful thing. I used to wake up at 6 in the morning. I used to sit in my private terrace. I used to watch the sunrise and just as we left every destination on the beautiful calm Adriatic, and then just film the boats, and there was a sunny glow on the other boats. And it was just a fantastic start to the day. So you have the sailing experience, then you have your beach stop every single day, and then you come into the town about 5 o'clock. There's usually a guided tour or something else, all this whole wine tasting, all this is included. And when you think about checking in, checking out, driving, blah, 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 that has to have a value in of itself. Food-wise, breakfast, lunch was always included on board. And we also had a couple of meals as captain's dinner. And we also had this dinner up in the hills, as I mentioned. And I think everybody without exception said to me that the food on board was better than the food they found in the restaurants on land. I mean, they really, really put a lot of effort into. And this also is included in the price. The other thing I think a lot of the guests appreciated was the fact that we became like a small little family. These ships take about a maximum of 35 people, I think. And they're not always 100% full. And so over the dinners and over the days, you get to know your fellow passengers. And they're generally like-minded people who like to travel. And for example, on the last trip I went to, I met the president of the American Immigration Bar Association, which in these times is a fascinating conversation to have. So really, really high quality conversation generally. People have traveled a lot. And also the staff become like families. So you have this access to local people and local experts when you go to various different tastings that are all ready for you. And that really, to me, was a really nice way for people to actually get to know the country through whatever questions they wanted to ask. And there was a really, really nice bond between the staff and between the passengers. And also, although on cruise ships, generally it's older people who come, it's really something for all ages. On Dubrovnik, we had a really nice couple on honeymoon, for example. They're in their sort of late 20s. But it's also very good for families. And it's one of those things for all ages. And you have all on the boats. And there are 3 different decks outside. So it's never too crowded. If you want your space, you can find it. Was a hot tub on the top deck, which I really, really appreciated on the second cruise, because I would get up every morning at 6:30 and I would record my vlog sitting in the hot tub. Everybody else was sleeping. Beautiful day. There was nobody else on the Adriatic in early May, and I had an hour and a half to myself in the hot tub. It was just absolutely magical. So in terms of accommodation, it was first class. The internet was really, really good. The food was fantastic. The service was fantastic. You have 0 issues about parking or transfers or packing. You had a really attentive staff who were there to help with all your needs, but also to provide you the information. And you have a nice little network of people you can interact with if you want to. And if you don't want to, there's no pressure to. And then you have all these first-class excursions. For example, we went to the wine tasting Island Village on the second cruise, which is one of the premier wine tastings in Croatia. We just sailed into Skradin. We had a perfect transfer. And then we announced to Krka National Park, everything perfectly arranged. And then down to Šibenik, and that was just an amazing day. And all of this is done, all the hassle is taken away from you, so all you have to do is focus on is relaxing. So you have this very, very luxury boat, and you have great staff, you have 3 different terraces, the hot tub, just amazing. You're sailing during the day, and as a fact, there's over 1,000 islands in Croatia, and it's just absolutely incredible. So how much does all this cost? Because if you're looking at sort of like really sort of luxury 4 or 5-star accommodation, transfers, excursions, restaurants, the food included food and so on like that. Well, in sort of peak season, the absolute maximum price for the top of the range is €3,900, and but then below deck you go down to about 2,200. But if you look around, you'll find there are some special offers on this. Is obviously a very challenging season for everybody, and some of the boats are really, really full, and there are 1 or 2 little quite interesting gems to be had. So, for example, I'll put a link at the end, but you can actually get a VIP cruise with your private terrace for €1,900, and the cheapest of the luxury tours so far is €1,700. So go to the website, you'll see the offers there. So if you look at that sort of price compared to what you would cost with your quality hotel for 7 days, with your food, with your rental car, with your ferry and excursions and everything else, plus the hassle, I think actually it's extremely good value. And for me, it's definitely absolute best way to see the islands in Croatia on your first visit. It was Split to Dubrovnik. It was absolutely magical. All the highlights. To me, Split to Lošinj and the Northern Gems itinerary, which was really away from the crowds, was much more relaxing as a holiday experience. So check them both out. They're both fantastic. And Catherine Lines, I've worked with them now for a year or so. They're a very, very, very progressive family business at the best of what they do. And they have a range of tours for the cheaper version as well. But these luxury tours are extremely good.
Tell us about the atmosphere on board and the boat itself.
Oh, it's very, very friendly and congenial, and great group, including the staff, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, both the passengers and the staff. And Daniela really sets, as our cruise director, the tone for everything. There's some rules, you're adults, you need to behave a little bit.
Yeah, that was for the Australians, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is the Yanks are okay?
Yeah.
No, it's been wonderful. The people, the Croatians we meet in the towns when we port, and the crew and our fellow tourists.
Excellent. Okay. And so you've obviously travelled a lot around. How would you rate this cruise in terms of value? Did you feel you got good value from the cruise, from what you paid and what you actually got? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's hard for me to compare because I have not done anything that is quite comparable. But I have done some other organized tours, but this was by far the best organized, the best delivery of what was promised, and it was just comfortable and excellent all the way, and definitely worth the dollars that went into it.
Excellent.
And the food, oh my gosh, the food. Man, just eat and eat, but it's all so good. You want to try it all.
Well, I have to say about the food, I'm a vegetarian, and they knocked themselves out to not force me to eat a bunch of meat, and prepared one after the other special vegetarian dishes for me. So much so that I felt guilty I couldn't eat it all.
Right. Wonderful.
Really great.